What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Ohio Cannabis Report, your go-to source for real talk in Ohio's booming but ever-evolving cannabis industry. I'm your host, Gerald Moore Jr., and today we've got a powerhouse guest who's been deep in the trenches of the green rush here in Ohio. Joining us is Eric Whited, cannabis cultivator, processor, advocate, and one of Ohio's most influential voices shaping the future of legal weed here in the state. From growing top shelf cannabis flower to lobbying for fair policies, Eric has seen it all, the wins, the roadblocks, and the untapped potential of this industry. We'll be breaking down everything from Ohio's $2.5 billion market milestone to the stumbling blocks in social equity, licensing, and product quality, plus what's next as recreational sales loom on the horizon. So whether you're a patient, entrepreneur, or just cannabis curious, strap in. This is an unfiltered conversation you won't want to miss. Welcome, Eric Whited. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate that introduction. I was getting chills, and then I realized you were talking about me there, man. That was really cool. I've really looked up to you since I entered the industry and found your page. I think that there's not enough people that can talk about cannabis in a calm, cohesive, and just easy to understand manner. And then on top of that, your professionalism really brings a lot to that. I think some of my favorite thing is just people from all walks of life. Like some of these meetings I sit in on now on different companies and stuff, you'll have a guy with beanie and his eyes hanging real low. People kind of doubt him, but he starts talking on there. He talks about microns and these technical things that other people way above that. So my favorite thing about cannabis is, I don't know, I'm a huge Kendrick Lamar fan, and I can't stop listening to Count Me Out like every day when I wake up lately, because there's that kind of vibe is my favorite kind of vibe. And I feel like this industry is full of people that really kind of carry that energy. So just respect what you do, and thanks for having me on.
Oh, for sure. I appreciate that. And I mean, that's kind of been my goal, right? Like, obviously being in the cannabis, and I mean, I've been consuming since I was 16, but obviously it being illegal, I've been in a public facing position most of my life being an athlete. So I've kind of been used to being on camera.
Hmm.
But I understood that, there was a challenge when we went legal for people to come forward facing and be on camera, be out in public, right, and use their voice or use their professional. So that's kind of why Ohio Cannabis Report was founded. I was just like, we need people using their voice that have been in the industry, have been using it to talk about it. And so I saw it as as a way to get in the industry without having the, let's say, millions of dollars to compete, for a dispensary license.
Hmm.
The media was the easiest way, right? YouTube is
Yeah.
free, StreamYard is free,
Yes, sir.
Instagram is free. So that was really the idea behind that. So I appreciate you, and I'm glad to hear that the work is being viewed in that way,
Yes, sir.
man. So thank you for all that. So with no further ado, man, like tell us a little bit about yourself, like how you got involved in cannabis. Yeah, the whole rundown.
Yeah, appreciate that. So I'm a fellow Ohio guy like you. I'm in Delaware, Ohio right now, living with my
Uh,
father, helping him out. He just had some surgery, so I'm actually in the basement that I built like 5 years ago when I got back to Ohio during the
nice.
pandemic. So I went down to USF. I went down to St. Petersburg, got my bachelor's degree in political science down there, and
Uh-huh.
entered the workforce down there after I interned with my congresswoman during my senior year. I was working with the mayor, helped the first woman. She was a gay woman that became our mayor in Tampa. It was really cool because Tampa and St. Pete and Orlando are kind of that strip in the middle of Florida that you have a lot of that progressive nature coming from. When you have,
Right.
the panhandle of Florida tends to be a bit more conservative, and then the southern part of Florida is a lot more of the older people, really money. Money rich people, so that middle part
Right.
of Florida was a really fun time. But yeah, I came back here. I've been in Ohio. Similar to you, I started cannabis around 19, and I was actually at OSU as an engineering student. And for years, man, I thought that I was, for years after that, I went to OSU as a full time student, then a part time student, and then finished up at Columbus State, all while continuing to not know it, but self medicate with cannabis. And,
Right.
cannabis was part of my journey when I traveled 1,000 miles away from home after I got my associate's degree, took time off to get in state tuition, and making my own journey for myself down in Florida. Cannabis was always a part of that. And not until I got back to Ohio, reconnected with some old friends, and found out about the medicinal industry here in Ohio. There was a medical industry in Florida, but it was purely you just say something so you can get access to cheap weed, right? Like that
Right.
was in Ohio. There was a lot more of a culture.
Okay.
Um, And I actually had debilitating headaches after COVID, which I started using Lighthouse Sciences migraine assist spray. It's a topical.
Okay.
They're found later on that their CEO, his wife and co-founder, is a certified aromatherapist. So when they're doing, not only do they use full spectrum products, but they're using ashwagandha root and beeswax and a lot of this other stuff like that. So that also, that just again, I wasn't. One of my first products in Ohio's medical program was not to get high, but it was to medicate myself. It was to take care
Right.
of a debilitating headache problem. And it took me a year and a half and different doctors and muscle relaxers and all kinds of stuff to find some actual relief to actually fix the problem with the headaches. But cannabis was one of the only things that could provide me relief without those muscle relaxers that would have me out for the next 24 hours or these other
Mhm.
things. I mean, I'm sure as an athlete, you know, like the different drugs that you were recommended for pain and stuff like that. I mean, there's a guy that in my personal life that one of the guys I share my medicine with, I've mentioned him in the state house. He testified at this in the state house after I did the same day. He takes my hard candies. I make RSO based hard candies because it's
Mhm.
fully legal in the state, right? That's one thing I always like to let people know is the legality and what you can do with that. And so he takes my hard candies, which have a very high efficacy, and they helped with his IBS and they helped with his degenerative spine. He was getting pain relief. We had some production issues. We were waiting to try out some different stuff, and we tried a different thing. And when he didn't have access to our high dosage RSO hard candies, he had to go back on oxys. And like that for me was kind of the moment where I was like, all right, this is. I know that it was medicine, and I know that, but like that was for me where I was like, no one is going to take this from me now because there's not somebody that is now important in my life. I've met his son. His son told me and him that like he sees the dad that he has like 10 years ago before this degenerative spine really started taking him out. You know, like that's
Right.
not something you get to hear from a lot of people. Like, and so the state's not taking that from me. You know that.
Right.
And just back to what you were saying, the reason I brought up all that Ohio State stuff is that every time I drive by Morrill Tower, which is where I was my freshman year, and I drive, I see there's like a little hill that I remember smoking by for like one of the first times I ever smoked back there, and like I think about when I learned about weed and when I thought of myself as a failure because I smoked weed and because I changed my major and all this stuff, and like now I have my political science degree, and I, after the pandemic and everything else, and I didn't want to be a politician in Florida. I came back to Ohio, built this basement for my father, and was getting involved with stuff back here. And like, I was like, all right, politics is going to be something back for when I'm 40 or 50, but for now, let me go hop into a new industry. I worked in hospitality for a decade. I worked in, blue collar work, and then, those through college, high school and college. And then I was in like the tech world doing sales and marketing. And like, dude, I was just a career hopper, like I was
Yeah.
always chasing, like, I have all these skills, but like,
Right.
I don't care about money. So like,
Mhm.
none of those jobs are motivating. I doubled
Right.
my salary in the 3.5 years I was in the tech space, but like, and commissions, but like, I was a soulless void, right? Like,
Mm.
and
Right.
after
Right.
leaving that industry and joining, like I said, became a patient, then became a bud tender, and becoming the bud tender was what really did it for me. I mean, I went back to making less than I was at my first tech job, but that first bud tender job. But at the same time, it was I just, one of my friends at one of these events recently, I just noticed she had a black sheep tattoo right here on her elbow, right? And I was like,
Mhm.
how many times do you meet somebody in this industry and it's like you have this immediate connection because we have been the black sheeps, we have been the ostracized people, we have been the people that have been lied to, discriminated against, pushed out. And like that's a thing, like I say all these things as a fucking white dude from the Midwest with a college degree that worked in the corporate world for a few years. Like I
Mhm.
recognize my privilege, I recognize what I am, but I also recognize who I am as a person outside of those things. And I
Right.
recognize that cannabis has been, it's not since the war on drugs, it's not since World War II. Like it goes beyond that stuff. Like World
Mhm.
War II is when like the real prohibition happened, and
Right.
the war on drugs is when they got the White House to be able to say these things in public. But since the beginning of an industrial revolution, like cannabis has been attacked and cannabis has been
Right.
villainized and it's been lied about. And so people like you and people like me, we focus on, that's why it says it on my Instagram is the main things I say on there is depropagandization, destigmatization, and normalization in education,
Right.
right? And depropagandization is not a technical word. But my
Mhm.
whole thing when I like to talk to people about that is like, they always say like a revolution starts in your mind and stuff. The revolution won't be televised. But like the way I like to look at that is like when it comes to changing your mind on these stuff, you really do have to start that on your own. And cannabis
Yeah.
is that tool, is that way that allows you to question those things. And
Right.
of course, since the industrial revolution, we've always been told that been lied to all of these things. Depropagandization is not a word because that would literally propaganda literally means to propagate an idea. And
Right.
so why would they make a word that would be taking away from their ability to spread their idea, right? And so
Mhm.
like, but what people like me and you, people like someone like you who has, like you said, you've been in a front facing thing for a while. You're an athlete. And as an athlete, you have to work hard on your body. You have to take care of you start to learn where you are like you learn of yourself as like a servant to the cause, right? And so like for
Mhm.
you, it's to the sport, to the team. And then I was talking to some people recently about that, about our us as servants to the plant and servants to the culture and stuff. And so
Right.
it's every day I feel like it's hard not to be motivated in this industry if you're plugged into people and you're talking to people
Right.
plugged into this culture, because it's like even if you feel like you're losing your own esteem, talk to
Mhm.
somebody else and you hear their story, like, cool, I'm good to go for another 6 months, dude. Thanks for
Right.
sharing.
Right. For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's been my whole gist, right? Like cannabis is one of those things where it's so ignorant to think that, me and you, different races, but we can't come together. Like it's a plant, you know what I mean? And there's so many different uses for it. Everybody else finds a different meaning and a cause. But if you can't be public about something that's helping you, that's helping other people, it just boggles my mind, especially when it's been illegal for such a long time, and now we finally have it legal.
So can I
In a
challenge you on
sense,
that there?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Because I no, I respect the hell out of how you've talked about these things, but I've seen that a
Yeah,
couple times, and I really appreciate, and I don't even know if I disagree with you. I just want to
yeah.
add an additional voice there because
Hmm.
I agree with you that clearly I was at the state house at Senate Bill 56, and I told these sinners that I have these 12 plants at my house, and they're welcome to come
Right,
see them, and they can come wash hash with me, and they can come
right,
like you said, I am very open with that stuff. I've even said
right.
that like if it comes to the point where I don't like to be an alarmist, but we see what's happening at the national level. We see where our president is talking about going after homegrowns, right?
Hmm.
Right now, they're going after people that are in this country that no matter what you think of them, they deserve due process, and they're not
Hmm.
getting that. And now our president is talking about homegrowns and doing that. So this is not a joke anymore. This isn't like I don't want to consider myself a martyr, but at the same time, I'm talking about it. I'm speaking up in the state house because I dare you to like arrest me for the things that are illegal right now. The things that are completely like I know the law better than
Hmm.
we'll have to talk. I had a call with one of the reps called me back today. I left a voicemail for right before this call today. We talked for like an hour. It was a really fun conversation. But back to my main point here is that like my only thing with that is that when you hear that from people, instead of feeling it as like you need to do that, remember that that's why we do what we do, right? Because
Hmm.
there's a lot of people that I work with that I talk to that I have people that follow me on Instagram that are showing up at events now just because of me speaking up at the state house, and I
Right,
have an inbox full of people talking about these things that they've gone through, the things that they've experienced, how like I I'm going to be as vague as I can here, but I have friends that, they work in certain jobs that should not be related, that aren't related to cannabis for or against at all. Maybe they work in the healthcare industry or the
right.
tobacco industry or alcohol industry, one of the
Hmm.
5 to 10 massive industries that are against cannabis. And
Right,
they consume my home grow. They've tried my companies. That I work for King City Gardens, which is a level 1 cultivator in this program. And like they've tried those products, and I asked them recently, I was like, hey, would you guys mind, like I texted a bunch of friends asking if they could get a couple reviews on Google reviews for my
right,
company, right? Because like that's important for SEO and content, and what we're building a new website for education programs. We want to
right,
I had multiple friends reach out to me privately about how they're not comfortable sharing these kind of things on their social media because their
right,
jobs, not like
right,
individual people at their jobs monitor their social media, and if they share these
right.
kind of contents, they can literally lose their jobs.
Hmm.
And that's just like the level of people that I know that are comfortable telling me that stuff. And then you talk to these people that, I mean, they have significant others that are, sorry, exes that they are no longer with. And it's like all
Right.
they need is one slip up because they're doing everything right, but maybe they forgot to put the lock on their outdoor grow one night. The ex comes by, takes a picture of that. Well, she's got unsecured cannabis growing on the property, and now she can lose the
Hmm.
kids, right? So, like, I just this is where I talk about, and again, like this is why I want to be an opposing voice here, because you are an African American man and you're an athlete, so you
Hmm.
have a little bit of a different paradigm than I do. But I talk about utilizing my privilege, right? Like
Hmm.
I don't ever want to act like I'm special because of the things that I have that give me that privilege, but I also want to
Hmm.
acknowledge how much easier it is for me to have certain conversations, how much easier it is for me to do these certain things. So when people share that stuff with me, I don't take it as my kind of question back to them is, okay, but how can you get involved? That's why,
Hmm.
my website is a couple. I'm probably going to have it launched by the end of this weekend. It's been busy stuff going on right now, but I have all of the pages on there. I'm just finishing the content, but there's courses on there about how to become an advocate, how to home grow, how to
Right.
process. And then the advocate, it starts as simple as like, you don't have to write a written testimony that'll sit on the government's website. You can contact your city council person, because your city
Hmm.
council people and your city treasurers are getting robbed right now. None of the
Hmm.
money that we have spent in these industries right now has gone to the localities that opened up these dispensaries that told they were going to get
Right.
30% of that. They're being
Right.
robbed by the state house right now, and that's on top of, since 2011 they've been getting robbed. They've had their locality in the actual state budget. It's been dropped down over 50% in the last 15 years. So like, they
Hmm.
deserve that money. Not for
Sure.
Rep Stewart, in his proponent, when he was proposing the legislation, he mentioned how in these communities where dispensaries have opened up cannabis, they do not see an uptick in crime. They do not see more traffic citations. They do not see all that stuff. He was saying that, claiming that the states don't deserve the money, but that
Right.
sitting there telling us that it's not a problem, that there shouldn't be criminalization. But he was saying that as a justification to rob those localities, as
Right.
if that money should not be going to those localities, not because it costs money, but because
Hmm.
these localities are being forward looking,
Hmm.
bringing medicine to their people, bringing
Right.
access to this stuff, so people don't have to drive 45 minutes away, don't have to drive to
Hmm.
Michigan. They are rewarding those localities. The people voted for those localities to be rewarded, because the people
Hmm.
voted on the legislation. And now the state is holding on to that money and saying, you don't
Right.
deserve that, when that money could be used to build parks, to do things, is as a reward for incentivizing, for bringing medicine and bringing this holistic thing to your people. Are the
Hmm.
people in the state said you should have that money to build parks, to fix the roads, because the state has been robbing you for decades now. And
Right.
what do? Not only do they try to change the legislation, they haven't even released the funds that have been made so far.
Right.
It should be criminal.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, this. I mean, the state has been known to be corrupt. I mean, since the householder thing, and I think that's the thing that frustrates me. Like, I know I have
I've heard you talk
privilege
about that
being.
with the Ohio stuff. Yeah, dude.
Yeah, like I know I have privilege, and that's what kind of like I'm just like because
It
I
doesn't have to be the
understand as
cannabis. There's a lot of corruption they could speak
yeah,
out about,
yeah.
dude.
It's I mean it's not just the weed. You know what I mean?
There's a
Like the
lot of.
weed is just
Look at
something
the
that
bill,
I
the issue
appreciate.
one, the bill,
Right. Yeah, DEI out of the public schools, which is, gonna obviously as a black, I'm not from Ohio, you know what I mean? So I was recruited by Ohio to play football here. Obviously, I didn't know what was going on in terms of politically and we were
Poor
cool back
guy.
then, right? We had Obama. The
Yeah.
president of my university was African American, but that was when I began to learn, right? Like I had to start studying Ohio at that point, like in 1804, the Black Codes. And so that's
Mhm.
when my mindset was like, oh wow, like, because East Coast and North, you don't really learn what was going on in Ohio necessarily, right? You
Yeah.
learn that, oh, Ohio was a free state, everybody
Well,
was coming up through the North and
Victor's
the
right to
East.
history, right? So the North
Right.
won, and I mean they did do some good things, but they weren't the good guys. They just
Right.
were the ones fighting against slavery.
Right, exactly. So again, you don't learn the whole like the complexities of it, right? Or the complexities of Ohio. You get to Ohio, and when we first moved here, we lived in Grandview, Upper Arlington, and I was like,
Right.
"Oh wow, this is crazy." But then I'm in a football role, right? So I'm coaching at the high school, so I get preferential treatment because I'm a coach. People know who I am; they see who I am. My wife is a news anchor, so I get preferential treatment, but I also use my position and my voice because I'm like, there's way more people who have power and influence who aren't using their voice, whether
Mhm.
they're scared or whether
Challenging
they're
those people, yes.
right. So like again, when I'm able to move up and
Mhm.
go and be at the state house, I'm like, well, I'm no different than anybody else. I'm just choosing to use my right to go to the state house and
Yep.
get involved. And so that's all I'm saying. I know sometimes I may not say it the right way, but
And that's
I
why I just
appreciate
wanted to
you.
challenge you. I didn't
Yeah,
want to
I
argue
appreciate
on that.
you.
I
Yeah,
just, because I share the same anger, the same passion, the same intensity,
yeah,
and I'm always trying to channel it upwards, outwards at the ones that are dividing us. But
yeah,
sometimes, because we get passionate, because we do that, I just, especially in cannabis, the amount of there's so many neurodivergent people and people that just hear things different ways, and I think the way we say
yeah,
things matters. And I don't think you're saying it incorrectly. I'm just
yeah,
learning the more I spend time in all these dispensaries over the state that's chock full of these people that are on the spectrum or dealing with these different neurodivergencies. I've had to learn that, like, even though I am well spoken and good, well intentioned, and fighting the right fight. Sometimes you don't get to choose how you're perceived. You just get to choose
Mhm.
how you present yourself.
Mhm.
And it's just something that's a personal lesson that I'm learning. And as I become more of, so this is definitely some projection too, right? Because it's something
Mhm.
as I'm learning, as I'm becoming more of a um, outspoken figure in this, that you naturally accrue enemies, right? And
Oh, yeah, yeah.
you can't give people ammo, and that's all I'm kind of realizing. And like when I meet
Mhm.
someone like you, it's like anytime I want to say these kind of things to people that are, fighting the fight with me, it's about like
Mhm.
keeping us both sharp, right? Because it's like
Yeah.
I want to say this to you now, and I want it to be public because I want people to see that we're having these hard conversations. Like I
Mhm.
always want to have the hard conversations. That's actually pushed some friends away in my personal life because I have in the past I've had some avoidance in my personal life, and I'm a
Yeah.
confrontational person, and I've been doing some ego work and some other stuff. And I just realized if we got to do stuff, we got to talk about it. And
Yeah.
unless that person needs privacy or deserves privacy or it's something intimate, like I'd rather talk about something directly. And like I'm not ashamed of things. I'd rather be
Yeah.
show that, like you as a male, I'd rather show that men can talk about, like men can be vulnerable, men can talk about these things, men can be excited about things. It's like that's
Right.
actually encouraged. Like
Right.
being that example for people is something that I don't think either of us take lightly, right? And it's like
Right.
it's also like I want people to challenge me in public. I want people to call me out for my bad behavior. I don't want to hear about it later. I want you to do it when I do it so that I can be
For
like, "Oh,
sure.
I didn't realize I made you feel that way. Let me fix that. Like, let me learn
Right.
about that." And it's not just for that person there, it's for all the people like them that I'm going to continue to meet that, just like we hear all the time, don't know how to speak up, right? It's hard.
Right.
This stuff's
Right.
hard, man. And it's
Yeah.
fun, and we can teach other people how to do that. We can be an example. And I think that's one of the core motivators for me, is being that I just want to show other people that it's possible.
For sure. And I
Like you
mean,
said, you're another person at your state house. I get chills watching your videos when you're out at the state house. You're sitting there recording yourself right in front of the stairs. There's a special feeling when you're there and you're like,
yeah.
oh yeah, I am just another. I said something to my friend. I was at her house recently. We were talking about all this stuff. We were talking about some of these level 1, level 2 cultivators and license holders and stuff like that. And they get a little bit of money, they get a little success in this state, and they start to think of themselves closer to the to the Bezoses and the Musks of the world, and the people that
Right.
they're living with in this state, and the people that their products are being purchased by. And it's
Right.
just like that's the thing that gets me. As I was like, I just always want to remind people that we've capitalism inherently brings like consumerism and
Mhm.
competition, and
Right.
I like cannabis because it brings together conversation and community, and I think those are
Mhm.
inherently kind of, I think capitalism and cannabis are inherently adverse to each other. And
For
personally,
sure.
that's something that
Yeah.
I've always considered myself a radical anti-capitalist since I was, a younger guy. I've been on the Bernie Sanders train since 2015 when my little brother showed me this guy announcing his presidency in his backyard. My brother was like 15, 16 years old, can't vote, can't do nothing. He made the Ohio for Sanders subreddit stuff, was teaching me
Oh,
about this
wow.
guy. So then me and my older brother kind of got radicalized through my younger brother, right? And like
Right.
when I was already like an conscious person, but that kind of really
Right.
started to teach me about the next layer of the Citizens United and all of that kind of stuff, and
Right.
just gives you a whole nother paradigm and example. And I'm that since then I've always considered myself a radical anti-capitalist, and it's not that I don't think that maybe anti-consumerist is a better word, but I don't know. Just for me,
Mhm.
it's like capitalism naturally incentivizes profit over people, and like I
Yeah.
don't think that there's a problem with having like at this point, we can probably admit that, like, at a large scale world trade, bartering is not something that we can do just 100% of the time. We can't just build and barter everything. But we
Right.
can inherently focus on, like, devaluing the importance of money, where there's certain things that aren't exchanged for money or for capital. There are certain things that are
Mhm.
inherently grown or made or gifted. And that's things where community comes in when you have a whole
Mhm.
neighborhood of different people growing different things. I'm not saying that
Right.
I want to live in a post money world, but there's certain
Right.
things that are taken care of. And I think that's why cannabis is inherently adverse to that, because it is a textile for rubber and
Right.
paper. It is a medicine, so it's better than taking Advil or Tylenol or antidepressants. It's
Mhm.
better than alcohol. So there's so many things against that, and so I think that's why it's inherently so hard to fight this fight, because there's not one lobbying group that's against it. It's basically the system of capitalism that does
Mhm.
not. It opens up our consciousness and makes us want to question things. That's
Right.
not good
For
for
sure.
authoritarian power. That's not good for. I
Mhm.
mean, that's why the prohibition started right in World War II. We're like, oh man, like look at what happens when people can question their government. We got to be careful. Like
Yeah.
we took out the ones that Nazis, they were too far, but like we also learned some lessons from them. We brought a lot of those Nazis into this country, to our science program, to our other
Yeah.
programs. There was a lot of authoritarian things, a lot of things, efficiency things that our country stole from them. It's like,
For sure.
so the fact that they take away this drug that allows us to open our mind and question things, that
Right.
people that are on the spectrum and people that use cannabis are both the kind of people that ask why. They don't just accept
Mm,
things because they are. And people who
mm,
make money and people who
mm.
use authoritarianism do not like being asked why, because they
That's why.
typically, it's about themselves, it's about empowering themselves or profit. It's not about
Right.
community and people.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you nailed it. You nailed it on the head.
Appreciate it.
So being on that, let's talk about we talked about SB 56 and House Bill 160. Since you've been at the State House, let's go into that and talk about, because obviously there's a lot of things going on in Ohio that isn't being discussed. There's a lot of money that has been flowing through the legal program. Obviously, we know the legacy market is flowing. But again, like you said, that money is not being distributed to the communities through the Social Equity and Community Fund. Just give the people a breakdown of SB 56 and House Bill 160, and then some of your thoughts around that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's two major ones to pay attention to, obviously, in the Senate, with Senate Bill 56 and Senate Bill 86. I feel, I don't want to say silly, but I'm a perfect example of how their games can take advantage of you, because when I testified on 56, I actually praised Senate Bill 86 because I had seen the parts where it had legitimized the 10 different minor cannabinoids that I am very passionate about. I was very happy that the state was recognizing those.
Let us know what those 10 minor cannabinoids
Yeah,
are.
so they were so here's let's go just to the general breakdown, right? The human being body has the endocannabinoid system, which helps regulate your nervous system. The human body naturally produces cannabinoids that pass through that as in like through your skeleton, endocannabinoid system, to regulate the nervous system, to send out signals, to process neurotransmitters, all of that stuff. Cannabis contains hundreds of cannabinoids. The ones that we care about are THC, CBD, CBG, CBN, and some of those other ones. The main problem we have with a lot of this stuff right now is that so I've got a tent right over here. I think you won't be able to see into the tent, but we can see, my flap right there.
Yep.
I got 12 plants over there. The light's going in there. I'm going to do some work on that after our call today. Um, Everything I'm growing in there right now, and if there's any, those are all in veg right now. But once they start to go to flower, that's all going to be THCA, because that is the acid precursor to THC delta 9, which is the compound that is psychoactive and gets people high. THC delta 9 means there is a double bond on the ninth carbon group. That specific double bond is what causes, when that enters your body and gets into your brain, that's what gives you the high. That is the one compound in all of it that produces THCA, is the acid precursor. It must get 450 degrees, wherein that acid will melt, and then it will turn into THC delta 9, and that is when you can get high. That's why you can't eat a nug and get high. You have to decarb it, or you have to smoke it, or vaporize it, or distill, or all of the different things that you can do out there.
Right.
That is the main, that when a lot of these confusion came up, is because the government says, well, THC delta 9 is what gets you high, so that's what we have to legislate. Well, for THCA, that doesn't matter. These
Right.
ill-informed, uneducated people legislated that and basically made it so that all of these people can now grow THCA, which is literally the same stuff that they've been growing for thousands of years.
Right.
It's the same stuff. And now they're muddling the waters because there's an entire hemp market. Hemp
Mm-hmm.
exists with CBG, CBD. Hemp is a resource that is used for textiles, for all kinds of things, for, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
paper, there's numerous uses for hemp. On top of
Right.
that, the minor cannabinoids. So the main ones, there's all of the minor cannabinoids have the same breakdown as THCA. So there's THCA, and then there's the acid precursor, and then there's the version that breaks down and is heated. So those 10 that they included were CBG, CBN, CBD, and I forget the other two right offhand. But because I'll get to the point on why I got so frustrated with this, because they wanted to legitimize those specific ones. The whole point of, there's also this delta 8 issue. Delta 8
Mm-hmm.
is very similar to delta 9, but that double bond we were talking about is on the 8th carbon instead of the ninth carbon. That's why it
Okay.
is 1/10, 1/50th as effective as far as potency wise. And it is also found at trace amounts in traditional cannabis and traditional hemp that is grown, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Delta 8 that's at gas stations and all these other stuff is THCA that never got turned into Delta 9.
Mm-hmm.
It actually broke down into CBN, which is a
Mm-hmm.
mildly psychoactive cannabinoid. So we've gone from tetrahydrocannabinol
Right.
to cannabidiol, and then cannabinol, and then that CBN they artificially create, instead of the bond on the ninth carbon, they artificially create a double bond on the eighth atom, which is now why they've made a artificial version of tetrahydrocannabinol, but it's on the eighth atom instead of the ninth. So I know that's very in the weeds, but that is why that THC delta 8 is a synthetic derivative of a broken
Right.
down version of a non psychoactively made version of THCA. So I think it's just,
Got it.
and that is what confuses people, because that same stuff is next to THCA, which the same
Right.
THCA is the same stuff that I'm growing in my tent that I can go buy from any of these dispensaries down the street from me.
For
So,
sure. Yeah.
and so when I was on the phone today, a couple weeks ago after, so Senate Bill 56, they passed that stuff. Senate Bill 86. When I was talking about that, I mentioned how Senate Bill 86 legitimized that, and I was happy about that. I had read through as much as I could at 56. I had looked at some of 86, but those are both, it's 100 pages. There's a lot of things to
Right.
do. They change them before you get in there.
Right.
What I didn't realize is that they're also going after THC beverages in Senate Bill 86. That sounds
Mm-hmm.
kind of confusing because that's not a huge market right now. It's,
Right.
we're starting to see them pop up, but why would they go after that? Well, I can tell you why, because there's companies like Trulieve that exist.
Mm-hmm.
Trulieve is one of the largest multi-state organizations in cannabis in the entire nation.
Right.
If you look into Florida and to Texas on Trulieve's own website, they are currently talking about how they are going to be selling THC Delta 9 drinks at alcohol and liquor stores in other states in this nation.
Mm-hmm.
So what we should ask ourselves, why suddenly, when there's 3 or 4 bills in our state house, one of them has 2 sentences about legislating the drinks and making it so basically that'll now go through the liquor control board rather than being in this whole cannabis program that we have created.
Right.
My friend and I can make drinks at home right now with the current legislation. The current legislation at home does not allow hydrocarbons. So that means butane, CO2, any kind of volatile chemicals. You're not allowed to do
Okay.
that. But you know what? Behind that door, I have a 20-gallon washing machine that I wash hash. That's legal because I'm literally
Right.
using ice water to wash off the trichomes on there. And then I can make
Mm-hmm.
that hash. I can turn that into, that is THCA hash, right? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
cold. It's never been heated. I can't eat that. I can't do anything with that. I can decarb that. I could press it into rosin and then dab that. I could make it into something for edibles. I can do any of
Right.
that. I can make it into drinks. I can
Mm.
drink that myself. I can make that. I can share that with friends. That is all
Right.
legal right now. They want to change that as well. They don't want us to be able to share that. They want us to be able to do any of that.
Right.
We have to ask ourselves why all these things happening are at the same time, right? So that's where I
Mm-hmm.
feel fooled by them, because I didn't even realize that where it looked like they were legitimizing those minor cannabinoids and helping
Right.
protect these stores, but then right after we finish that, they ignore 43 opponents. They listen to the 4 proponents. They pass it with 0 changes. Gets over to the House. They didn't spend enough money in the House, so they don't introduce the same language in the House because they haven't
Right.
bought off enough of the reps in the House. So
Mm-hmm.
now they introduce House Bill 160. House Bill 160 contains a chunk of language from from Senate Bill 56. It
Mm-hmm.
also contains some of the language from Senate Bill 86,
6.
including the drinks, including the
Mm-hmm.
minor cannabinoid stuff. On top of that, it dropped some of the licensing stuff. So in the Senate bill, they wanted to get, are you familiar with level 3 license holders and that what they were going to be awarded this year?
Yeah.
Okay, so for anybody at home that's not, it's essentially awarded to level 3. Level 1 means that a grower can have 100,000 square feet of canopy space. Level 2 is 25,000. Level 3 is going to be 5,000, and it was going to be for those like yourself, like myself, who don't have millions of dollars. We were going to be able to invest with a group of 5 to 10 people in a small grow space and actually grow craft cannabis in this state. That was
Right.
also going to be part of that social equity program, wherein people
Yeah.
who are charged for minor drug offenses, maybe growing a few plants at home, we're now going to have the chance to grow it in a facility, pay the state taxes, pay the state money, and be part of this program. We literally
Yeah.
created a program for the black market to legitimize themselves, to join this
Mm-hmm.
market, to be taxed. And we asked to be taxed. We said, hey,
Right.
give us a pathway, give it to the people that have already been doing this, and we will pay you money for the license, we will pay you money for the taxes, just make it a little bit fairer. And they did.
Right.
And now they're trying to rob that. In the Senate
Yep.
bill, they wanted to take rid of it completely. And the House bill, Stewart said he's not willing to discuss licensing yet. That'll be on the next bill.
Mm-hmm.
Basically saying that for the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to be legislating this just like any other industry.
Yep.
So it's mind blowing to me. And
Yeah.
so I was watching the House bill. As we both know, they're going to be back from recess soon. They're going to be reintroducing this either next week or the week after. First or second week of May, we're probably going to see this come up for testimony time. And
Yeah.
so a lot of us are preparing right now. A couple last week or 2 weeks ago, it was just 420, which as a someone who is an educator and a brand rep is a very busy time of the year for me. It was a lot of events and connecting with people, educating with people. One of my friends just completed her first home grow. It was really cool. I've consulted with over 10 people now on their
Oh,
indoor and
nice.
outdoor grows, and
Congratulations.
I've literally been bragging about her everywhere. It's so cool to help someone grow, especially for their first time, to show people
Hmm.
what they have access to.
Right.
I could get into a whole thing on that, but I wanted to talk about the rep because I watched that thing. I had the screen grab going on my computer because I, like you, understand the importance and lack of content right now, and not
Yeah.
necessarily like taking dabs and taking blinkers like my friend
Right.
Ebony Hempress talks about, but like she literally said, she's like, dude, you're not going to see that kind of stuff on my story. I'm here for education. I'm here to connect people to the plant. I love that because
Yeah.
I'm like, there's enough of that content. We don't
For
need that.
sure.
We're here to
Yeah.
provide educational content, to provide
Yeah.
logistical content, to provide organizational content. And
Yeah.
so when I called, I was recording the screen grab on my computer and may have taken a dab or two as I was doing it, having my iced coffee just like this morning. You see the energy that I get with a dab and some iced coffee, right? This is not the typical stoner energy that people
Right.
expect. I take a dab and an iced
Lazy,
coffee.
sleep.
Nah, man, I take a dab in an iced coffee. I'm talking that before this, like I said, I talked with a representative that is on the Judiciary Committee in the House, and now
Yeah.
I'm talking to one of the most influential people in the state when it comes to cannabis media. Like that's because of my dab and my coffee. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, and so I did that a
Breaking the
couple.
stigma.
Exactly, man. Just showing people that, like, don't get me wrong, if you're lazy and you smoke weed, you're probably still going to be lazy.
You're gonna be
But
lazy.
if you're
Yeah.
motivated and you smoke weed, it's probably going to help you with some of that pain you're dealing with, or maybe some of that anxiety, or some of the other.
Yeah.
I love awesomine, dude, because I have depression. I wake up
Okay.
every day dealing with suicidal ideation and just the
Yeah.
struggle and the weight of life. But terpinolene and awesomine, these two terpenes, when mixed with cannabis and other minor cannabinoids, provide me with a sense of belief in myself and a sense that I can do stuff. And so that for me is just what's really important, is to give people that education just so they can find that for themselves. So
For
I
sure.
was recording the content, and I had to do it twice because I had some technical issues the first time, but that second time through, I was starting to get, and that was my third or fourth time, who knows how many times watching this stuff, and then watching your stories where you've already beat me to the punch. You've already been uploading stuff because we're out here, we're educating people, we're giving people this stuff. So I see this
I
stuff
try to
again.
do it on the go.
Dude, it's crazy, and I'm trying to be like, I love it, but I'm trying to get like, oh man, I can't wait to get my stuff out there, dude. But my point being is, as I'm recording that, I'm getting so worked up. Well, like, I hear Jamie Callender, and I hear Rep Muhammad, and I hear these guys asking good questions and challenging
Yeah.
the people. Rep Eric Seidenberg, I hear them asking good questions. So pretty much as they came up, I had the state website pulled up, and I was just calling everybody on the committee. So like that day, I think I had like 13 or 14 calls out to the state house, right? And I was like,
Mhm.
well, I know I'm on a list now, right? Like, the same number calls the state house over 10 times in a
Right.
period of an hour. You know that number is going to be on a hot list
Right.
now. But I think three offices answered. Not a single rep was in. Obviously, I mean, you don't typically call. I was a rep for my congresswoman in Florida, and I was like my national congresswoman, and so like, you don't. She's not typically the one answering the phones. That's why you have
Right.
staffers, right? But those
Yeah.
staffers report, they take notes, and if you're a human being with them, if you're civil with them, if you share your experience, they document that. And if you are meaningful and make a connection with that person does work for that representative. You can actually
Right.
connect with those people.
Hmm.
So I just used my personality skills. I connected with people. I tried to talk to these people, and I'll have people can make their own judgments on this, but the only reps that had somebody who even answered in the office, Jamie Callender, the one Republican
Hmm.
that has actually put out decent legislation on this stuff over the years,
Hmm.
he had a rep that answered in his office, left him, or a staffer that I left a message with. Every single other Republican on the committee, I had to leave a voicemail for, except Rep Williams. I called him twice because I was particularly inflamed by him and the way that he was talking about the criminalization. I'm sure you heard that guy talking
Hmm.
about joints in the car and bags.
Hmm.
He's like, well, I'm concerned that well, how are we going to know if that's off the black market or homegrown?
Hmm.
Here's the thing, man. You don't get it, no, because
Right.
it's legal for me to grow it. It's legal for me to
Hmm.
share it. So you're
Right.
not criminalizing something that we just voted to decriminalize. So I
Right.
called his office and talked to his staffer for 10 minutes. I said, I want to know why you think I'm a criminal for helping my family member not narcotics for having a hysterectomy. I want to know why you think I'm a criminal for helping my friend not take oxycodones for his degenerative spine. I want to know why you think I'm a criminal for teaching people to grow their own cannabis so they don't have to pay money to these criminals and line your pockets. I
Right.
want you to tell me why that is. I told that staffer, I'm not one of your constituents. I'm not one of his constituents, but I am somebody. I'm a concerned party that he is calling a criminal in the state house. And I said, you
Right.
want to know who I am? Go look me up. You can see me number 5 as a proponent or an opponent of Senate Bill 56 right after the ACLU. You can call any other staffer on the committee. They can probably see that I left a message with him as well. And like I said, the timing is awesome because right before we got on the call today, talked to Rep. Eric Seidenberg. He is the 21st district, which is like Euclid up in the north up there. He has
Yeah.
a couple localities with dispensaries in there, so he has some localities that are being
Right.
robbed right now. And he called me, man, and I felt heard. I'm not going to lie. I talked for 45 minutes, and this man, when he'd asked a question, he just shut up and listened. He was actually being a representative. And I mean that in like the
Right.
kindest way possible. Like, you'd ask a question. He wasn't like, he would let me go on like you do, where you're actually having a civil discussion and you let someone make a point, you sit with that and you ask a question back. It wasn't,
Right.
he wasn't trying to do gotchas. He wasn't trying to like argue with me. He legitimately was like, I don't remember the message I left with his particular staffer because, like I said, I made a few calls that day, but I know I'm glad
Right.
enough that I made an impact. We talked for 45 minutes, and there was a point in there where he goes, well, I know that there's a couple bills in the Senate. I'm sure that the Senate Bill 86, that was probably better for you, right? And I kind of laughed because I just explained the whole situation to you, right? And I kind of
Right.
explained that to him, and I was like, and he goes, okay, so like, but what about like it taking care of like the gas station stuff? And we'd like that. And I said, all right, man, I'm not trying to do a gotcha here with you, Representative, but I want to know, do you and your fellow colleagues on the committee, do you actively know the difference between THCA and THCA Delta 9? There was a long pause, and he says, I can confidently say that not all of us do.
Right.
You're telling me that these people on this committee are legislating about the difference between these, they're talking about 10 to 12 of these cannabinoids, but there's
Right.
100 of them in this plant.
Right.
These people don't know the difference between the two ones that are the only two that should be legal in our market and should be sold through dispensaries should be THCA and THC Delta 9. They should also be able to sell all the minor ones. But all
Right.
of these gas stations and CBD stores, they should have every right to be able to sell any kind of THCV is non-psychoactive. It's literally called diet weed, where it literally is a diet suppressant. We should be able to
Right.
have access to that. CBG helps with anxiety and helps with focus and helps with gut issues, helps people with
Yeah.
IBS. We should have access to that. All of these things should be access through the hemp market. Ohio has rich soil in the Appalachian Mountains. Look
Right.
at the Appalachian Girls. Like, there's a group down there called Appalachian Girls. Check
App
them out. Like,
girls. Yep.
there's so much good stuff that comes out of the Appalachians and the rich, fertile farmlands of this state. We should be legitimizing hemp. We should be legitimizing our cannabis culture.
Yeah.
Ohio can be the East
It's an
Coast pride and
agriculture.
it,
Like
we could
Ohio's main
you ended this talking about $2.5 billion industry. That's not talking about the hemp industry on top of this.
right.
What if we
Or
were
just
like,
agriculture in general, right?
what if we had, instead of like 77 hemp farmers, we had like 70 hemp farmers, and all of these different farmers, one of their crops in their rotation as part of their agriculture things was that they were actually growing hemp and cannabis. What if like the state was paying farmers to grow cannabis
To
that
grow
was then brought
weed.
to the state house and brought to education program, where people like
Right.
me and you who have education, who have built out these resources for people, are teaching people. I taught a representative today. I heard him taking notes on what the
Right.
difference between and I went through that whole walk with him, and I'm like, how has nobody ever done that to you? There's lobbyists.
Right.
These companies that have existed, they have lobbyists. How have they not gone to these people and said, hey, this is how A plus B equals C? Like,
Right.
that's who we're fighting against. And then while we're doing all of that, we have to watch alcohol commercials. We have to have alcohol billboards. We have to be lied to and fight this stigma. So, like,
Right.
yeah, I'm never going to be quiet about it, man.
I mean, you shouldn't. And I mean, I'm grateful for you because, I started Ohio Cannabis Report, I think right when medical started.
hmm
And so, it's just like you feel like you're in a void. And, because one, I've been a stay-at-home dad. So it's like I haven't had tons of time to do I've been doing this on my free time when I have a little bit of spare time. You know what I mean? In between watching kids, in between, again, like I said, my wife's a news anchor. So she's on the big screen. People see her, but again, they're not able to discuss certain things in a certain type of way. But even with my wife, like the more cannabis legalization came in, the more she started talking about it online, and we're having that conversation. I'm like, I told you so. Because
Dude,
again,
my mother is the public and media relations for the Delaware County Sheriff. Do you know how uncomfortable it had to be for her that her son is starting to become like an outspoken voice on this stuff? But she's also a brilliant woman that like sees the fact that her three sons became radicalized through Bernie Sanders and are firm
right,
in their beliefs. And she saw, I'll never forget this, man. After I've been a rep in this industry and been doing this stuff and growing my own, I make my own dabs. I brought my Puffco with me home for one thing, and I'm not going to get deep in the conversation I was having with my mom, but basically I said, okay, now that we've come to a certain understanding, would you be okay if I had like my Puffco at the house for this Thanksgiving, right? Just do some dabs in the bathroom or whatever.
right,
And I did. And at the end of the night, I was staying the night there because I was traveling up to see a friend up in Marysville the next day. So I was staying at my mom's house that night. And I remember after my brothers left, she said something to me and she's like, honey, I know that weed doesn't make you lazy. I know that kind of stuff. I've seen that and I've heard that from you. But like, I think tonight was the first time I really saw how it actually makes you like more patient and more involved with your brothers. And I was like,
mm,
I literally could have started crying, jumping and spinning in circles. And I'm
right,
like, so many of us, that's all we're trying to get you to understand. Well,
right,
yes, this plant
yeah,
can give you a high and can be recreational. A lot of us are just using this to get to even with you. A lot of us are using this to get past that pain, to get past that mental angst, to get past that degenerative spine, to get past that IBS where you have to use the bathroom 12 times a day, to
hmm,
get past those thoughts in your head. We're not using this plant to get stoned. We're not using this
right,
plant like sometimes I do. Sometimes at the end of
right,
this
right, right,
today, I'm working my ass off today. Like I said, I talked to one of the state reps. I'm talking to you. I'm gonna go
right,
finish with some plants over here. You know, at the end of I'm gonna go over to my friend's house where she's got some acres, and we're gonna start digging the trench to put in. We're gonna do a hugelculture outdoor grow where you dig, you put logs in the ground, you put the sticks in the ground, you basically make your own little micro. I'm doing that today too. I'm gonna be medicated while I get through that. I have some low dose stuff. I have some of my hard candies, but you know, at the end of the day, I'm gonna roll up some of her home grow, and we're gonna
right,
sit there and smoke a fat joint and take a deep breath and relax and relish on the work we did in that day because you can
for
use it for
sure,
both of those things. And then
right,
maybe this Sunday when I'm taking my first day off for like the first time in like 12 days between working in the real world, working my like full-time job, doing this
right,
stuff, maybe I'm going to take a small hit of something, a micro dose, and then write in my journal and do some spirituality stuff because this
right,
plant is used for so many different things. Like, and they don't get to tell us what is when it's medical, when it's recreational. That's not their choice.
right.
We've legalized it, and now we get to make that choice.
Right. And that's beautiful. I mean, you explained it better than I think I've heard it explained. And we have that right. And that was one of my biggest things about legalization was once they made it legal, they opened the floodgates for us to
Yeah,
begin to talk
yeah. Put the
about it.
catnip back in the bag, bro.
You know what I mean? Like it's a wrap. You know what I mean? And so because again, like being an athlete, like I would say 65 to 75% of the guys that I play with at the Division 1 level, at the NFL level, consume cannabis, right? And so I was studying healthcare, right? So I'm studying healthcare, studying how the Western medicine system works, business, stats, accounting, right? But then, I'm playing and literally I'm a crash dummy. I played safety. So, I'm a crash dummy. You can go to the trainer or go to the doctor and get whatever pills you want. You can go get a shot of Toradol. You can go get cortisone shots. But God forbid somebody walks in smelling like a little bud. You know what I mean? And so, again, that was my reasoning is just like we persecute people for a plant or the consumption of a plant. Whole time, we celebrate every celebration, we're chugging alcohol, and so knowing the damage that is caused, whether
Well,
it's
it's a good
the
thing that alcohol isn't like alcohol and gambling aren't like pushed to kids though, right? Like that would be
right,
detrimental to
right,
our society. Like if we
right,
had like advertisements like juice boxes that have now become like alcoholic drinks, or we had like gambling on like apps for children,
right.
that'd be
All the
detrimental. But
food
God
and
forbid
all
we have like a cannabis that says that that's going to help your sleep. Well, that might scare people. That might indicate well a kid could take that. It might think it's a regular sleep med.
right.
Dude, it's insane.
Yeah,
So I was reaching over here, so I wanted to show you these. So these are hard candies that I make, right?
nice.
These are not for sale. I don't have a business for them. This is something that I make for people. I make for myself and I make for my people. So they're black hash cannabis oil based hard candies. And I want to explain what that means because um, a lot of what we are purchasing in Ohio's program, a lot of what is on the border in Michigan that a lot of these people go to for these $10 carts for, $100 for 10 carts, they're smoking what is called distillate. Distillate is pure THC, either A or Delta 9, depending on if they've decarbed it first, right? We have talked this whole time about the importance of like the holistic nature of the plant, the fact that the plant has all of these different like chlorophyll and fatty acids and terpenes and all of these minor cannabinoids. Distillate is just that psychoactive chemical. how
Mhm.
many people do we talk to that like, bro, I don't know, I can't smoke this modern weed. It makes me too anxious. It's way too strong. They're not wrong, bro. People are making 30% weed with 1% terpenes,
Right.
remediating it. And remediation is
Mhm.
something I'm incredibly passionate about. I don't want to spend too much time talking about it today. People will find my website. It'll be live after the weekend. It'll be ebthc.me,
Okay.
which is education-based THC. But I'll have a lot of stuff on remediation there. But remediation robs the plant of a lot of its full spectrum, just like
Mhm.
distillation makes it pure THC. And so
Right.
people aren't wrong when this stuff is just making them hyper high. It's giving them that literal brain psychoactive high, but they're not
Mhm.
getting minor cannabinoids in their gut. They're not getting a
Right.
regulation through their endocannabinoid system. So your head feels like you're fucking shooting through the sky, and the rest of
Right.
your body is not being regulated by your
Mhm.
endocannabinoid system. Here's
Yeah.
another thing. A lot of that distillate, I'm not one of those conspiracy people, but a lot of distillate is Chinese distillate. There's
Mhm.
Chinese distillate gets shipped into these nations. So there's companies like even in Ohio's program that buy their distillate from one processor. They
Right.
buy their minor cannabinoids from another out of state vendor because that's legal because it's hemp based. And then they buy
Right.
their other terpenes from another vendor in another state.
Mm.
They've created a mechanical
Right.
vaporizer, right? Let alone the edibles, which are then, distillate. Then they put in gelatin based, which is just bones. It's like,
That's
you do
wild.
gelatin based gummies. And gummies are easy because they're cheap, they don't melt, they're easy to last long on the shelf.
Right.
But what most people don't realize is that gummies aren't going to do it. So there's that whole idea that like edibles, I can't dose myself properly with edibles because I don't know how long it's gonna take. Well, they're not wrong because if you take a distillate based gummy that's got gelatin in it, you're gonna
Mhm.
chew on that, you're gonna swallow it, it's gonna go to your
Right.
gut. If your enzymes, if you have the proper enzyme balance in there, you're gonna be able to dissolve that stuff. And then that THC delta 9 is going to go to your stomach or go to your liver, and that is going to turn into 11 hydroxyl or 11
Mm.
hydroxy, 11 hydroxylose, whatever term you want to use for it. That is a metabolized version. That is the only thing that's going to get you high from those old school distillate or non full spectrum edibles, particularly from a gummy.
Right.
So that is why distillate is not the best. Nowadays we see nano emulsification, which means
Right.
they've nano emulsified the entire gummy. So as you eat it, as soon as it hits your stomach, it's going to start
Mm.
to absorb into your stomach and the lining in your stomach. So we're kind of getting a
Mhm.
double processor thing here,
Right.
right? Well, there's also this subset of sublinguals, which is really important to a lot of people. A lot of
Mhm.
people don't use any edibles at all because just like people who use dip or people who use these other things, tobacco mouth products is in pouches. We've been
Right.
seeing a couple of those, right? God, it's a good thing those aren't marketed to kids either.
Right.
Or those freaking vapes that are colorful and got little animals on them. God forbid, dude, it's crazy. But
And you see tobacco as soon as you pull up into the gas station, all you see is tobacco.
and dude, it's wild. But that right there. So we even talk about that. So my point being with all of that is that a tincture sublingual underneath the tongue is going to enter your endocannabinoid system very quickly. The blood vessels in your cheek are going to be able, the efficacy of which the THC and the minor cannabinoids can absorb into that and regulate your entire endocannabinoid system. On top
Right.
of that, the sublingual, it crosses, you have what's called a blood brain barrier that protects chemicals from entering your brain.
Mhm.
A lot of certain low dose edibles, certain like patches, things like that won't have the strength to cross that blood brain barrier. But and even on an edible, you have to wait for that to process in your liver to release, to go through your blood system to cross that blood brain barrier. So you still have to wait
Mhm.
for all of that. That's why it can take 2 hours. A
Right.
sublingual, the tinctures, those oils, people get a high within 15 to 30 minutes because it's crossing your blood brain barrier because it goes directly into your bloodstream right
Right.
here and your blood brain barrier is located in your brainstem, right? So it's right there. So
Mhm.
within 15 to
Right.
30 minutes, you can get effects. You're
Right.
also regulating your endocannabinoid system. So
Right.
we've made the importance of why distillate's not the best, why full spectrum is good. We understand now the importance of processors. The reason I love these and why I want people to make their own, want to learn how to do these, are because they are hard candies. You make a RSO, which is Rick Simpson oil. Anybody can
Mhm.
make it. It is not illegal. It is not hydrocarbon based. It is not, you can use grain alcohol, which is perfectly legal to buy and get drunk with all you want. You can buy that grain alcohol. You can use it to make RSO. Rick Simpson is a Canadian who created the process for a black hash cannabis oil, particularly called RSO. He patented it not so he could get money, so that anytime a company made RSO, they had to call it RSO so that people would look that up and then realize that's something they can make at home and cure their
Mm.
skin cancer with at home, just like he did.
Mm.
So I make RSO based hard candies not because I want to sell them, but because I want people to understand that. And what makes these so special is you put one in your mouth. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes to dissolve. By the time you have finished sucking on it, you are already beginning to get high. That's
Mhm.
unheard of for a lot of people unless they're used to tinctures. On top
Right.
of that, it is very simply a hard candy. It is very simple on the ingredients. It's going to coat your stomach lining. It's going to coat your stomach, your esophagus. The same lining that is in your cheeks is all the way through your entire intestinal lining. So it's
Mhm.
anywhere that stuff is sitting in there is going to start absorbing through your body. That's why these have cured numerous friends IBS, because it's absorbing, and it's sun-grown cannabis, so it's high in CBG, where it's picked up in the CB2 receptors in your gut.
Nice.
And then after you've had 2 processors, then whatever THC9 that hasn't been absorbed elsewhere is then going to go to your liver. You'll get that traditional 11 hydroxyl high. So these are a triple processor, right? And like, I
I need
understand they're
some
not
of
for,
those.
dude, I just told you that I don't sell these things. I will be happy. I was at a cannabis event last night. I was giving these out to friends because they're
Oh,
legal,
nice.
because I make them on my own, because I don't sell them. There's nothing about this as far as what we voted on issue 2 that is legal. And I want people to know
Yeah.
that. I want people to know that everything I'm doing, I joke around, I say it's my government mandated 12 plants. I live here with my
Yeah.
father, 2 adults in the house. I got my government
Right.
mandated 12. I look at it as a way of like showing people the full capabilities of what they are allowed to do. I'm not saying everybody should do that, but
Mhm.
that is how I want to do it. And that's how I want
Sure.
people to understand their connection with that can be. And what's crazy is that if we all do that, that actually builds a larger market for these level 1 cultivators, for these MSOs, for these other organizations.
Right.
The more people that understand that this is what all cannabis is, it will actually enrich everybody that is making money off it already and the people that don't have access to it. So why are so many people against
At least the
it?
loud ones. I mean, at least the loud ones.
Yeah,
But
it's wild, man.
we're coming up on an hour here, so I'm
Yeah,
gonna get ready to let you go.
yeah.
But let us know anything that you haven't talked to us about that you think Ohioans should know, or cannabis curious folks should know, and then let us know where we can find you at,
Yeah.
and anything else you got for us.
Awesome. I appreciate it, man. Well, first
Yep.
again, man, this has been an awesome time. Like I said, I looked up to you since I found your stuff, and to be invited on the show and just to be able to have this chance to talk to you, it's really exciting. I guess I like to address with a lot of people that I am somebody who is outwardly spoken. I'm building my own website. I'm challenging things that the DCC does, but I also do work within this state, right? Because I don't you have an awesome experience, and I love that you have, dude. You're a black stay-at-home father that is advocating for cannabis. You are, I don't want to use that phrase lightly, but that's a friend of mine, um, a woman that I look up to that I've met just this year in this industry. We were doing a lunch and learn at a dispensary. Lunch and learn is whereas I, as a level 1, as a brand rep for a level 1 cultivator, I go into dispensaries. I buy food for the brand or for the staff, the bud tenders. I go in there and spend 3 hours in their break room. I feed them. I have product displays. I have worked with King City Gardens to develop an entire 11-point slide presentation to talk to them about what the endocannabinoid system is, to talk to them about remediation. I'll sit in there and talk with these things. I had the luxury of another person joining me. She's a mother. She has 4 children. And she was talking with another mother who was working at the store in a small town in one of those smaller dispensaries. And she said,
Mhm.
I was kind of sitting there. I got off my soapbox. I was letting her get into her little thing. And she said something about how the one mother said it to the other, that having a child and raising it your own way is one of the most revolutionary things you can do. And that kind
Mhm.
of broke me down there, because I'm like I consider myself a revolutionary and radical anti-establishment person, all this stuff. And I was like,
Right.
holy shit, no matter what I do, raising a child that is self-sufficient, that it has challenging on their own, is still one of the most revolutionary things you can do. And I was just like, it's just such a reframing moment for me. And like, I've already looked up to that woman, and like I've been to Legoland with her and her kid before, and like
Yeah.
I'm helping her build her farm out there. But like, that's the kind of connections and friends we need going forward, right? And so like, when I talk to you, like, I don't want to sound hyperbolic, but you are like a revolutionary in the way that you are a stay-at-home father. You are cannabis forward, and you're providing a pathway for that. Now I say that because I also want to say that I work a lot. I have a strong work ethic. I'm not a workaholic, because I don't think we should have to work for a living. I think that
Right.
there should be a different society structure, but we don't need to get into all of that. My point being is that to fix things, you sometimes have to be a part of them. And so right now, I work in Ohio's program at a level 1 cultivator. I work for King City Gardens. We are one of the few companies in this program that doesn't own remediation tech. We work with Cannabis, who is a processor. They don't use distillation technology, right? There's we are a cultivator that doesn't remediate and a processor that doesn't use distillation. That's pretty rare in this state. Are we perfect? No, man. We're run by business people that have millions of dollars, just like every other company that exists in that state, because that's the barriers that the state set. That
Right.
doesn't mean my owners are bad people. Have they made bad decisions? Every business person has. I'm not here to defend them. I'm here to be a representative of their brand, what they're doing, and what they're challenging in the state. And here's the thing: I've been pretty loud as EbTHC, as education-based THC, as Eric Whited as part of the EbTHC. They have not asked me to quiet down. They have
Mm,
not asked me to stop talking about these things. You know,
mm,
it's easy to be mad at these people, and it's easy to be upset with these people, and it's easy to be upset with the people that are sitting here showing the money that they're spending in Ohio's market on these metric things. But you know, like, I looked up, you talk about being in this stuff since 2015. It's like the people that own the guy that owns Cannabis and one of the investors in King City Gardens spent millions of dollars on a 501c3 back in 2015 to get those signatures, to get this program started. Does that mean they
mhm,
get to have the carte blanche to do whatever they want in this program, like people like Andy Rayburn and Buckeye Relief have? No, it does not. It doesn't mean that you get to just be the king of that program now. But if we want to look at how hard it is to fight this stuff, if we want to talk about how hard the state has made it to do this, companies that exist in this program have to get over the hurdles that the state made. They have
mhm,
to be they have to be players in capitalism. They have to be shrewd businessmen. Does that mean that
mm,
I love every decision they make? No, I'm still going to have my things, but if they're going to continue to employ me and allow me a seat at the table, I'm going to bring the culture to them and explain to them what I know from my side of things. And as long as they allow me to do that, I'm going to stay part of the metric program. I'm going to stay working compliant with the DCC. I'm going to work within those things, but I'm also going to spend an hour talking to people at the state house, demanding that they create a better program for them. The last thing that I got super, super excited about is that I asked Rep. Eric Seidenberg why there's not legislation. If he and others have talked about creating legislation that actually works with an issue too, but addresses some of the concerns of the state. And he's like,
mhm,
yeah, we just need somebody to do it. And I was like, but like, where is that? And he's like, well, and just everybody's looking for the person to do it. And I was like, you know
mm,
what? Like, I think this is my time, because like I talked to this man, and Rep Eric, I'm Eric, he's Rep Eric. We had that little fun energy, and he's like, Eric, I'm telling you, you write, you work with your people, you create some kind of legislation, you create a framework for legislation. You can bring that
mhm,
to me. I will work with you, and if it's something that me and you can agree on, I can take this to the Legislative Service Committee, and we can submit
mhm,
this in the next thing. Like right now, it's too late. We're gonna have to fight House Bill 160. We're gonna have to fight
yeah,
what they're trying to do right now, but if we can fight this and we can shut this stuff down, this session's ending soon. Those people are going to have to go and back to their constituents. They're going to have to get
mhm,
reelected.
right,
We can push that fight then. And then the whole time that we have, it's not just me fighting, man. I'm part of a cannabis consumer coalition. You can follow me on
mhm,
EbTHC. You can follow Civics Cannabis. You can follow Rodney Hash. You can follow Ohio Cannabis Report. You can follow the people doing this stuff already, and those people, we're all going to have our fight to play. There's going to be a lot of my friends that are going to have to be part of boycotts, and they're going to be a lot of my friends that have to be part of tearing these things down. But while I'm actively allowed to be part of this, I'm going to continue to build this program and challenge it and make it better. And my main goal going forward is going to be getting people involved and stopping what's going on right now, so that I can focus on building something going forward. I know that I'm not going to be doing that alone. I know that I had an incredibly rare opportunity to be one of the people that helps that conversation go forward, but it's going to take a lot of us, and we all know that. I'm not going to write 50 pages of legislation on my own. That said, I took multiple, I'm a political science student. I took 4,000 level poli sci courses. I took courses in constitutional law. I know how to write whereas and therefore and so be, and also I know how to use all of their sleazy language talk, just like I know how to speak corporate, just like I know how to speak street. I can talk to people about selling a loud pack on the street, just as I can talk to somebody about selling a 2.83 metric tag that has been tagged from seed to, like, I can speak whatever language you want me to. All I ask is that you speak to me, you know?
mm,
That's what it comes down to. And like I said, I know that this is going to be a hard fight, and I know that not everyone's going to agree that I should be part of this industry while also trying to fix it and change it. And maybe I'm going to make some of these business people mad, but as long as I got people that believe in me, I think that I am going to be part of this culture moving forward. And I want companies like King City Gardens, I want companies like Canis, and I want companies that are like Sauce. There's these Matt Hyde works for Sauce. He works for
mhm,
a someone in this industry. People say the same thing to him. Well, you know what? He's got a 50, he's got a nonprofit. He's building a website to do data collection from
mhm,
actual people who consume in this state, so that, because right now lobbyists have organizations where they can go and gather data, and they can have, you can I took high-level stats courses. You can make data say whatever you want, but you have to
Yep.
have the data.
Yep.
And right now, the lobbyists can afford, the crest growers and the Trulies can afford to have the lobbyists, and they can afford to
Yep.
get this kind of data. We're going to crowdsource data from people in this industry and then be able to use that
Mhm.
in our own thing. So as he's creating, like I said, I'm not doing this alone. While I'm starting this legislation, he's going to help me with that, and then we're going to be able to have data that we can cite from on this stuff, because we're going to be presenting something new at this next. Like this is the beginning of something new, as long as we're all coming together and fighting against what they're trying to do right now. And I know it's hard because there's so many things going on in this country, but the reason that I find that I have such conviction for this is because I know that I can impact this, right? I know
Mhm.
that I don't know what I can do to stop Elon Musk or to stop what's going on in Israel and Gaza. I don't know how to stop the military industrial complex. I don't know how to fight Citizens United and overturn the fact that corporation personhood exists, but I want to, but I don't know how. But what I do know is
Mhm.
that every day I meet people like you, I have the opportunity. Rep Eric calls me, I have the opportunity to talk with you. That just keeps happening to me lately. And as much as I can, I'm going to use that and fight for that right now, because maybe that means we can change the conversation here and then it'll go elsewhere. That's how I kind of lean on that. Other than that, dude, thank you so much. I really appreciate you letting me talk today. This is, like I said, I think we're kind of in that just 420. There was just all these protests going around the nation and all of these things going on in our state right now. I think May is going to be really big for this industry. I think this is when they're really going to come through and push through House Bill 160 and really try to make some changes. The reps I've talked to believe that it will likely almost certainly pass committee unless we can get Jamie Callender and 2 other Republicans on the committee to vote
Mhm.
against it. If they're anything like the Senate, if it gets through the committee, they're going to take it to the general body very quickly. So in the
Mhm.
next couple of weeks, follow Ohio Cannabis Report, follow EbTHC, follow Civics Cannabis. We will do our best to keep people informed. My website will be up within the next week, and it will have general links to, I primarily want to give people links to education, to resources, to databases, but also to just general basic understanding of other things as well. So look out for that as well. But other than that, just happy to be on here with you today and just find another person that we can point people to in this fight. So
Man, Eric, thank you so much, man. We appreciate your time, all your knowledge and information. We'll definitely continue to follow you and support everything you're doing, man. So hope you have a
appreciate
great
you.
rest of your day, man.
Yeah, we'll talk more soon. Appreciate you.
Yeah, later.
Bye.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We got Eric from EbTHC. Make sure you guys go follow him on Instagram. Make sure you follow us on Instagram. Make sure you tap the subscribe button. Make sure you like and comment. Anything that you liked about this video, let us know. If you're in Ohio, what part of Ohio, what you think about the Ohio cannabis industry. Let us know. Again, this is another Ohio Cannabis Report special. Thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time, peace and love. Blessings.